We kind of know that commerce is connectivity game, but Recommerce is like next level connectivity game.
Yeah, maybe to recap on when we say commerce is all about connectivity, even though you would be an OS or what, like I haven't yet found a commerce solution historically that would have handled pretty much everything. Even SAP has sub-modules that they've built or acquired. If you want to really serve your merchant base, usually the merchants' operating environments are so specific in, I don't know, taxation and all of the software that they use, for example, in customer data platforms and all of that, that you really need good API connectivity if you want to serve a commerce need, because otherwise you're not that useful for the merchants. So it's a world where sometimes I like to think about it. It's almost like you'd just be like connecting cords to each other, like those. I'm actually, what's the word in English? Like jatkojohto.
Extension cord.
Extension cords. And so like you're just like building the system through extension cords, and sometimes you just find that, hey, actually this extension cord is connected to itself almost. So it's this kind of hot mess of extension cords, but that's just the nature of commerce, I think, and some solutions just make the extension cord management a bit easier. But that's the nature of commerce in general. In Recommerce, why it's next level, I think, is this temporality aspect of it, and the fact that operationally it's even harder for a single merchant or retailer to handle all of the operational lifecycle stages internally. So maybe they do inspection, but then the refurbishment goes to a partner network, or maybe reverse logistics has to be figured out almost like store by store or state by state. There's so many operational nuances that are somehow local in nature or product specific that your connectivity network becomes also a lot more complex. It doesn't have to be complex to kind of connect to individual operator, but there is kind of almost like configuration layer rule sets on moments where, all right, this is now this brand, I will need to send it to that refurbisher. Okay, down this is another brand that we have a refurbishment contract there, or recycling contract. So all of this becomes a bit more complex, and that's why connectivity is even more important in my opinion.
Sounds like it's like a issue for like large operators, but even for small operators, maybe like one person shops, it might already be that there is like multiple of these connectivity points or integrations and so on, starting from, let's say, sales channels.
Yeah, definitely. Like, let's just think about someone who wants to handle their product returns in general. The volume being, I don't know, 20 a month. For example, it might be that you don't want to sell your outlet or secondhand stuff for whatever reason yourself in your own store or online, but you need to do something with them and you don't want to just throw them to the garbage or burn them. It might be that you want to dump those somehow, like from your inventory, just select them and put them out to be like bulk purchased from eBay or an aggregator that is specifically operating in that product category. But again, it's kind of this connectivity becomes more important, that you need to, when you need to kind of do big bulk decisions in your inventory, that might be a thing that you need to do. To be honest, I think, for example, mistakes that we might have done in history has been that we've fallen victim to the idea that let's now design, based on, let's say, 100 merchant requests, let's design a process here. Let's figure out like a logic how commerce works. But it's you can have you can try to do things that makes it easier for a merchant to do most of the things, but there will always be these special edge cases that you need to cater. You kind of need to always remember that you're in the business of building OS systems. You can kind of help them forward 80%, but the last mile, the 20%, they need to be able to configure in whatever the way they want. Whether it's building a extension cord chain of, I don't know, 10 extension cords, going out of the window all the way to the warehouse, or whether it's configuring a edge case logic, because those are actually, I think, where most of the merchants try to find their advantage and kind of the alpha. If everyone would be running their business in the same way, the only thing that they would compete with is brand. But those extension cord setups are, I think, the interesting aspects. I heard once in an exhibition, there was one merchant operating in Europe. They had the option to either integrate via super smooth integration to do cross-border shipping, and that automatically handled tax declarations and all of that. But the cost of that shipping was like, let's say, 20 euros. But instead, if they would drive themselves with a van every week over the border and from there ship it, kind of do the declaration there on a bulk level there face to face, the cost per item, the shipping became 50 cents. And this was just some random legislation meets regulation meets like integration pricing thing. So for them, it was super important that their specific commerce system enabled them to build this custom add-on piece for this single dude that was driving a van once a week over the border, like 3 kilometers in their case. But the gross margin effect of that was measured in over a year in like 100,000 euros. I vividly remember this story because the entrepreneur was kind of saying that I just need software that I can do these small hacks because for me, that's where I make my cash. If I'm reduced to using out of the box market solutions, I end up finding myself losing 100K due to some local border tariff tax thing that I could just go past if I would be able to print something here.
Sounds like a pretty interesting example of like you mentioned earlier that at one point you were kind of designing this perfect solution for something, and I assume it didn't include this, like there is this dude driving 3 kilometers, but of course that's something that you definitely need to have in part of your like order, and you need to have a record of that and kind of what stuff are you actually putting into the van.
You can find a lot of these edge cases, and then to me the beauty of commerce software would actually comes from your ability to cater to these in a scalable, beautiful way. Building operating systems is like imagining all of the ways how people are using Mac OS. Probably some really odd usage patterns and how people, but they kind of need to cater somehow to those. And of course, sometimes you make these bets that, all right, we can be confident that this is something that we can like lock in the 80% just to make sure that, let's say, a new merchant entering the market, entering commerce, a new entrepreneur has it a little bit easier to get off the ground. But often the growth story of merchants, in my opinion, is connected to these kind of explorations where they find hacks on how to build their business, and they need to be able to kind of configure the last mile super flexibly, or otherwise you become a growth hindrance for them. And I think that's something that we're also trying to be a lot more mindful and solving with our kind of the new version that we have coming out, which is taking these into consideration a bit more.